So, Jai Hind all of you once again. I am in front of you. Today in my second lecture, I am going to brief you about overview on cascaded style sheets, that is CSS. Okay. So, we all know that what is the purpose of using CSS. As we have already learned that we used to make web pages, different web pages with the help of HTML, that is hypertext markup language. So, whenever we want to make our page more animated, more attractive, right, more user friendly, more eye catching, right, so we use cascaded style sheets. Okay. So, nowadays the websites that we've seen while surfing on internet, they are very attractive, right. So, we used to see different elements, different attributes, different images, text that is floating on the screen from right to left. All that we will see is all is done through cascaded style sheets. See, okay. So, now in today's lecture, I will brief you about CSS. So, first of all, I will select with the first topic that I will discuss is about CSS selector. Now, what is selector here? What is selector here? Whenever we want to write a code, on a web page, right, that should be user friendly, that should be more attractive, more design, right. So, we will use a code. So, we should know that how we are going to write this code. Okay. So, for that selector is used, CSS selector is used. So, it is just like a formula. Okay. So, we just write the name of a selector. Selector means which tag on which element we are trying to show something, we are trying to design it in attractive manner. So, for example, I write it here H1. H1 means this is the heading tag that we all know. So, on this heading tag, what design properties I want to set. For example, I want this H1 heading should be in its color should be red. So, I will use its property color. For example, there may be another property. So, I can use color, write a colon and red. I will set its value. So, this is a property. This is called as property, right. This is a value, right. And what is this? This is a selector. Okay. So, whenever on the web page this heading is showed on the web page, then its color will be red. So, this is how we will write the CSS selector. Okay. So, as it is written here, it is used to find or select the HTML element. So, what element I have selected in this example? H1, heading 1. Okay. So, we can divide the CSS selector into 5 categories, right. Selectors means just writing in this manner. So, there are 5 ways, there are 5 categorization on which I can write these selectors. Number 1 is simple selector, right, combinator selector, combination of more than one, okay, pseudo class selector, pseudo element selector, and lastly attribute selectors. So, these are the 5 categories. Okay. So, this is important from the interview point of view or examination point of view. Okay. So, what happened in simple selector, each element based on name. So, here I have used the name H1, heading 1, right. So, on the base of name or ID that we will learn in further slides. Class, so we will make a class, simple class is made, simple ID is made, simple name is given. On the basis of that, you will use properties like this and set the values of those properties. That is a simple selector. Combinator means combination of more than one property. Okay. So, each select element based on a specific relationship between them. That is combinator selector. Pseudo class, select element based on a certain state, right. So, I will discuss with the help of example in further slide, nothing to worry. Pseudo element selector, we will select and style a part of an element, right. Fifth is attribute selector, element based on attribute or attribute value. So this is the value on the basis of this value, right? So these are the 5 categorization here, right? Now, one more important thing that we have to keep in mind, that while doing that HTML coding, we will write code like this. We will start use a notepad editor or VS Code on which we do the coding of HTML. So while doing this, designing a web page, doing the coding, we will use a style tag. We will use a style tag. Under that style tag, we will use CSS, right? So I will tell you there are a number of ways how we can include the CSS on a particular web page. So this is while doing coding on a particular web page, I have written here. So this is termed as internal CSS. How we can do coding of CSS on the same web page. Okay. Also, we can make a separate file also of this CSS with the extension of dot CSS, right? That is called external, right? And also like this, in a particular line, we can also write this coding of CSS, that is called inline CSS. Okay. So I will discuss this further. There are several ways. So now number 1. We have used these types of, we have learned about these types of selector and how we are going to use it. I will show with the help of an example. Okay, next. Now, this is the simple CSS element selector example. As you have seen that I have used here a paragraph. You can see it. This is a paragraph tag, right? So under this paragraph tag, I have used a property text align, value is center, color, its value is red. Okay. So this is a simple element. What element? P. P means paragraph. Okay. And you are seeing this. I have enclosed this, designing this code within a style tag. Okay. This is how this CSS will be reflected. Okay. So whenever this page is run on web browser, so here it is written paragraph. Every paragraph will be affected by the style. So when it is displayed on the web browser, the color of this line will become red and it is aligned centrally. Text align is center. Okay. So this is CSS element selector. Now, what is ID? ID means that what is ID? ID is used for identification, right? For identifying something uniquely. So similarly, ID of an element is unique. Okay. So we will use ID attribute of an HTML element for any particular specific element. Okay. So how we come to know that we have make a ID? So whenever on a coding page, you will see this character hash. Okay, na? Hash, and any element following this hash, then you will come to know that we have used ID selector. Okay, students. For example, I have used here para1. I have given the name. Some name is given here, para1, but it is followed. Para1 is followed after this hash sign. So this means that this is an ID. Okay. So wherever I have used this ID, the name of that ID is para1. What this ID is doing? This ID is aligning the text at center and its color is red. Whenever I have used this, include this ID. So how I am going to include this ID? For example, see here, I have used this ID. What is the name of the ID? Para1. Under this para1, 2 properties are set. Okay. So this ID is where it is shown? It is shown on this paragraph P. Okay, paragraph. So this hello world will be displayed with color red and at center. Okay. Now in the next line, similarly, I have used paragraph tag. Simple paragraph tag is there. This paragraph is not affected by the style. So that because we have used ID para1, this hello world is reflected by this para1, but this P is not reflected because I haven't used any styling attribute on this element, single element. Okay. So this is ID. Now next is class selector. Now the question arises Sir, how we are going to identify we have used a class? So, as in ID you are using the hash sign, similarly whenever you are going to use a class, you will see this dot character, this dot character, ठीक है ना? So, this dot character is followed by the name of a class. Similarly, hash symbol is followed by the name of the ID, class ID, sorry, ID, simple ID, and this class name is followed by the dot. See here. In this example, we have seen that dot center, it means this represents a class in a CSS. So, what this class will do? This class will align the text in center and the color is red. So, how I am going to use this class? You are going to use this class with this, right? In ID we have used ID, that is uniquely identified, but in class I will use this word class. Okay? So, what is the name of the class? Center is the name of the class. So, to include this class effect will be shown on this heading H1, right? So, red and center line heading, and again P, okay? This class effect will also be shown on this paragraph attribute, okay? Red and center line paragraph, right students? So, for any single element we will particularly use the ID, and if we want to use the properties of this class to be reflected on number of elements, number of tags, then we can make a class, okay? This is ID and now this is class dot, using dot, okay? So, we can also specify that only specific HTML element should be affected by a class, only specific element. For the specific element, I have used here that this class properties will be reflected only in this paragraph element, okay? In previous example, I have used journal class dot center, and this class properties will be reflected on H1 heading and paragraph. But in this example, the class will be reflected only the specific element, and that is paragraph element P dot center. If I write here H1 dot center, then it will be reflected only on heading H1, okay? Now, see how it is reflected. I have used here H1 class is equal to center, okay? I have used this class center, but this class is made specifically for which element? For paragraph element, na? So, these two properties will not be reflected in under this H1, okay? So, I have written here this heading will not be affected, right? Where it will be affected? It is only affected on this P paragraph, P class center, right? So, this is how we can show a effect on the specific HTML element, okay? Now we know, now also there is an example that HTML element can also refer to more than one class, okay? We can also refer more than one class. For example, one class is for specifically for P dot center, P dot center, P dot center. This is the one class, okay, in which I have aligned the text in center and color is red. Again, I have defined another class P. For another particular element, I have used P dot large. The name of the class is large. So, we can HTML element can also refer to more than one class, ठीक है ना? Firstly, P dot center, then secondly P dot large. Under this P dot large, I have increased the font size to 300%. Okay. Now, see, H1 class is equal to center. So, in this coding, I haven't make any class which will reflect on this H1, on this specific class. So, it means the text which is written here will not be affected. Okay. Now, P class is equal to center. Okay. P class, then P class, this paragraph will be red and center line, right? Similarly, no issue here. Now, next I have used the name, class name is as well as center and large. So I have used, firstly, this is my first class center and this is my second class space large. So what will be happen through this text? This paragraph will be red, center line and in a large font. So these three properties will be implemented on this paragraph tag that I have used on in this second line, right? So this is how we can use the class. Okay. Now universal selector, this is also important. Universal selector. So whenever you will see this symbol, asterisk symbol, multiplication that we'll use to in coding several languages. So this star represents the universal selector. Universal selector means whatever property is set within that universal selector, that will be reflected on all the elements that we will going to use on our web page simply. Okay. Now here see, this is how I have defined a CSS universal selector. Okay. So what does this selector doing? It is doing our alignment, text alignment towards center, and the color of the text should be blue. Okay. So I have written here H1 hello world, P paragraph, every element on the page will be affected by this style that I have already showed you. Okay. P ID para 1, I haven't used any ID here, but it is a universal selector. So these two properties will also be shown on this text also, me too. Okay. Again I have used a paragraph tag at last and me here also. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all these 4 lines will be adjusted according to these two properties. So this is the use of this. This is called universal selector, right? Now grouping selector, group it, then as the name represents, we can represent in groups also, right? So for example, I have used here, this is the CSS that I want to show on the heading H1. The whatever text which is written under this heading H1, text line should be center and color will be red, right? Now H2, I want the whatever is written on under this heading S2, text line should be center, color should be red. Again in paragraph, whatever is written, text line should be center and color should be red. So I have seen that on these 3 tags, on these 3 elements, I am using the similar properties, right? So this takes lot of time, consumes lot of time, है ना? So as an alternative, I can use grouping selector. So what is the grouping selector? In place of writing these code, I just written, I will write H1, comma H2, comma P like this. And whatever properties I want to set, I can write here, right? So this is the advantage of grouping selector. See, H1, H2 and paragraph. Okay, so whenever this line will be displayed on a web browser with the help of web browser on our web page, a smaller heading, this is a paragraph. So all these 3 lines will have an alignment at center and the color is red. So this is the example of grouping selector, group selector. Okay. What you have to do using this group selector? You have to use simply a comma within those elements on which we want to show the CSS. Okay. Now another important thing is that, so now we have learned how we are going to use number of selectors. Okay. Now how we are going to insert, this is also very important. We should all know how to include the CSS on our web page so that browser can read those styles. Okay. Number 1 is external CSS, number 2 is internal CSS, number 3 is inline CSS. Okay. External means we will write a separate code, separate file, and then we will include it, How we are going to include it? There is a tag called as link tag is there. Using that link, we will give the address of that file, right? Internal CSS, as we have already seen in the previous examples, with the help of these style tags, we are going to include the internal CSS. And what is this inline? Inline means on the specific tag. on the specific tag P, for example, on this paragraph, I just want to do some styling. So I will use in a single line this tag, style tag on a particular tag. It is called as inline CSS, right? So see, in action CSS, I have make a separate page. So what I am going to use is on my web page, I am going to include with this tag link. Okay, link, rel relation, style sheet, type, text, CSS, hyper reference, my style.css. So I have make a separate file, my style.css. So that will be included, whatever I have written. Okay, and that on the text editor we will save that file using .css extension. Okay. Okay. Now the thing that you have to keep in mind that .css extension will not contain any HTML tag. It will contain only CSS tag. ठीक है ना? So for example, how the CSS file looks like, my style. So simply the code which I want to reflect on that page, for example, P, I just want a tag. For example, how am I going to write a select? For example, I want to reflect this P paragraph, and I want the color of that paragraph as red. Okay, simply one P H1. The color of the heading should be blue. Okay. For example, I have written here, this is my file, and I have saved this file using my style.css. Okay. Now what I am going to do is, now I am going to include this file like this. Given the address here, H reference address here. Okay. Then those properties will be reflected on this H1 and P, right? Now internal CSS, for example, in this internal CSS we have already shown the example. So while writing that HTML code, within that HTML code I have inserted the CSS using this style tag. See, right? So this head body, so the body background color will be linen, and the H1 heading color is maroon, and its margin left is 40 pixels. Okay. Inline, see. So for this particular specific tag, I have read this inline CSS. So I have shown a style on heading H1. What style? Color should be blue, text line should be center. So this is called inline. Secondly, I have shown that the CSS style on paragraph P, so whatever should be written, the text color is red. So this is inline CSS. Okay. So whatever writing a code, in which code you are comfortable, you will use inline CSS or external CSS or internal CSS. Okay. Yes. Multiple style sheets. If same properties are defined for the same selector in different style sheets, ठीक है ना? तो then the value from the last read style sheet will be used. ठीक है ना? Assume that, for example, that an external style sheet has the following style. External style sheet has a following style. What style? कि heading H1 color is navy. ठीक है? For example, ठीक है? And also in the internal style sheet, I have written that the H1 color is orange, right? For example, just understand the question that I have used external CSS also, I have used internal CSS also, I have used inline CSS also. Now the question arises that what properties will be reflected by that web page? The property that we set on external CSS, the property that we have set on internal CSS, and the property that we have set on inline CSS, right? So in external CSS we have set the color of that heading navy. In internal CSS we have set the color as orange. ठीक है ना? Now if the internal style is defined after the link to the external style sheet, ठीक है? If we have defined internal style sheet after including the link on a web page, after external style, then the color of that heading should be orange. Okay. Now, for example, here look, we have a link here, mystyle.css. Then after that, I have used a style tag where color orange. So how this page will be reflected? This page will reflect this H1 heading 1 color as orange. So this is a heading, this will shown as orange. Okay. Now, if the internal style sheet is defined before the link, for example, in the previous example, we have defined this external sheet firstly, then we have include the internal CSS. So in this case, internal CSS properties will be reflected. Okay. Now, if for example, if I have used internal CSS style before the link, so here I have firstly defined the internal CSS and now I have include external CSS. Now, what will happen? What will happen? Then in this external CSS, I have set the color as heading of H1 as navy. So then this H1, this is heading. The color of this is a heading is in which color? Navy color will be reflected. Okay. So this you have to keep in mind. Okay. Now, what is the cascading order? Cascading order means how the properties will be set, that we say that which priority will be followed. So highest priority will be given to inline style. Highest priority will be given to inline style, then external and internal style sheets according to the head section, which is included first, then browser default. Okay. This is again, you know that if we want to include the comment in CSS, then we will include it using /* whatever you will include between these symbols, this will be termed as comment. Okay. Web browser do not interpret this, it not be included as a source code here, right? Color. Now, this is also important. Color, how you will going to set the color? You all know that there are a number of properties of color. For example, H1 style background color. Okay, na? So we will use the name of the properties background hyphen color. Okay. Again, P style background hyphen color. Okay. So we know that colors are already predefined. So there are a number of functions available in CSS: RGB, X, HSL, RGBA, HSLA. This will represent the saturation property of the color, RGB. These are the predefined functions. These are the predefined functions that we can easily use. Only we just need to give the value of RGB, means 3 parameters, HEX 3 parameters. Okay. So this is simple color. So this heading color will become tomato. Here this paragraph color will become dozer blue. Here this paragraph style become medium sea green color. Okay. This is the text color. Similarly, border color is given. H1 style border. Okay. So we have use here 3 properties. You can see that we have set this border 3 properties, the values of 3 properties, 2 pixels, solid and tomato, means the color of the border is tomato color. Okay. And the line should be dark, solid line. Okay. And it is 2 pixels wide. So such type of assignment is called as shorthand. This is the shorthand property of the border. I have used shorthand means I have used number of properties in a single line. Okay. Whether it will time consuming to write again, this is the first line, again we will put a semicolon, then we will set this property, again we will put semicolon, then we will set this property for border only. So in short, we can write in a one line after leaving a space between them. So this is a shorthand property example also. Okay. So this hello world will be displayed in a border 2 pixel wide, solid and tomato. Okay. Similarly, this hello world, this hello world will reflect these properties. Okay. So these are the CSS border color. Now as I have said that these are the predefined functions available in CSS. So you can see that I have set the background color as RGB. So this is the value of R, this is the value of green, this is the value of blue, RGB. Okay, right? We can also give the value in hexadecimal like this color. We can also write the value in this using this HSL function. In percentage, in pixels, we can write the values here. Okay, so this is very easy. You just have to keep in mind and provide the values here. Okay, similarly similarly this RGB and this is RGB function, and hex, and this is hex no hex, this is HSL. We have HSL function. This fourth parameter is it will show the saturation of that color. See, now the same color tomato, but 50% transparency will be there because we have used here fourth parameter as 0.5. So this 4 parameter function is RGBA and HSL 4 parameter function is HSLA, right? So you will see the difference. Matlab saturation means the content of that white color will be more when we will use this fourth parameter. Okay, so this is very easy to use, just predefined function. Okay, now this is background. So lastly, we should know about how we are going to set the background color. Okay, we have shown the text color, we have seen the text color, we have seen the border color. We can also set the background color. So body background color should be light blue. The background color behind this H1 heading should be green. Div tag is there. The body color behind this div tag, whatever is written, is light blue, and the body color behind this piece should be yellow. So there are number of tags, there are number of properties that we can set. Okay, we can set properties for border, we can set properties for margin, we can float the image right, left, we can float the text up, down, we can set the margin from top, from left, from right. There are number of tags available. Okay, you just have to keep in mind, see those tags and how the value should be provided. Okay, in the same manner as we have seen. Okay, so that's all for today. Thanks students. Thank you very much.